All right, so today we're talking about solving one-step equations. However, we're going to be focused on the multiplication division aspect of it, okay? So before I talk about that, let's talk about, so with addition and subtraction, we talk about the additive inverse, right? So let's talk about the multiplicative inverse. Multiplicative. Okay, so in other words, if I had, let's say, 2 times what would give me 1 again, okay? So this is typically a little bit tougher, okay? So if you notice, it's going to be 1/2, okay? So essentially, you can think of it this way. I took the 2 and made it a fraction as 2 over 1, and I flipped it. So the same as the true is if I use, say, let's say if I said 3/5 times what would give me 1, you would say 5/3. Okay? No, it still has the same sign, same exact sign, right? Because we remember spawn as well, right? So spawn means same sign, positive, opposite sign is negative. So if this was negative 3/5, then we would want negative 5/3. Okay, so this is just telling me that again. Negative 3/5 is the multiplicative inverse of negative 5/3. And that negative 5/3 is the multiplicative inverse of negative 3/5. Okay, so that is we're still talking about the same thing. Same thing here. 2 is a multiplicative inverse of 1/2, and it's also for 2. But here's the thing. What happens though? Look at this. Look at what just happened. Now, if I was to talk about the operation, right? So let's do this here. Let's take this, put it over here, take this, move it up, okay? So when I talk about operation of multiplication, I need to also talk about the opposite operation, okay? And if I ask you what's the opposite operation of multiplication, you're going to tell me what? That's right, division, right? And the opposite operation of division is multiplication, okay? So here's the thing. This right here, the opposite operation of multiplication is the same as multiplying by the inverse. Okay, so if I had a 2 that I can multiply by 1/2, which multiplied by 1/2 is the same thing as dividing by 2. Okay, so, and you're like, what do you mean? Okay, so let's take a look. So if I took 2, and if I was to divide 2 by 2, I get 1. If I take 2 and multiply by the inverse of 2, which is 1/2, I'll also get 1. So these two right here, dividing by 2 is the same thing as multiplying by 1/2. Means the same exact thing, okay? All right, so let's leave that. Let's get into some examples here. So again, we'll only focus on the multiplication division aspect of things. So let's do an example. So first example says, so my goal is still to get a positive 1x or positive 1, whatever the variable might be, but still a positive 1 of that, okay? So let's say this example says negative x is equal to 48, right? So one of two things I can do. I can divide by a, so if I look at right here, this is not the answer because the x is not a positive 1x. This is actually a negative 1x. So I could divide by a negative 1. Then I would get x is equal to negative 48. Okay? However, if you were to just look at this, right? If negative x equals 48, then x must equal to negative 48. Or you can think of it as just, hey, if the left side is negative, right side is whatever, you can just, if you flip the sign on the left side, you got to flip the sign on the right side. So that's pretty much essentially the same thing. I flipped the sign on the left side because it was from negative, it turned to positive. So that means whatever's on the right side, I got to flip the sign to the other. Since the right side is positive, it became negative. Whoa, hey, that's a pretty box. With thick board. Okay, I'm struggling. There we go, that looks better. All right, so let's try another one. Let's see here. So for example, if I had said negative 29 equals to negative x, then x must equal to 29. Okay, so now sometimes you guys go, well, but now the x is on the right side. Well, this and this means the same thing. Okay, 29 equals x and x equals 29 mean the same exact thing. There's no changes to it. It still is the same thing. Okay, all right, so let's say I have negative 5x equals negative 155. Okay. Now, I know I haven't done this, but I'm still doing the same thing because if you think about it up here, whatever I do to the left side, I have to do to the right side. Okay. So notice this right here. I divided by negative 1 on the left, so I divided by negative 1 on the right. Okay. So here, I want to get a positive 1x, so what I'm going to do is I see that between the 5 and the x is multiplication, so I would divide by negative 5. So whatever I do to the left, I got to do to the right. Okay? So on the left side, negative 5 divided by negative 5 is going to give you a positive 1x. And what is negative 155 divided by negative 5? 31. And it's going to be positive because it's the same sign, going to be positive. Okay? So let's try another example. So you're like, wait a minute, Chan, but you were talking about multiplicative inverse. When the heck are we going to use that? I'm like, well, okay. So let's look at this right here. Let's say I have x over 5 is equal to negative 5. Okay? So you're like, well, this is really division right here. That's really division, so I could just multiply by 5 on both sides. And you're absolutely right. That is very true. So I would have an x is equal to negative 25. Absolutely true, okay? Because on the left side here, because when I multiply by 5, I can put it over 1. And that means I really have a 5 divided by 5, which is positive 1, x is equal to negative 25. You're absolutely right about that. I will not take that away from you. That's absolutely true, okay? Now, the x over 5 is the same as saying 1/5 x. These two mean the same thing. Because remember what I said before, there's an imaginary 1 right there, right? So essentially it's 1/5, 1/5 x, all right? So, let me just do it this way so that you guys can see what I'm talking about. All right, so you got the 1/5 x. So what if I had the problem as 1/5 x equals -5? Are you gonna divide by 1/5? You're like, I've never seen that before, right? And there is a way of doing that, and don't get me wrong. I'm just, like I said, the reason why I showed you multiplicative inverse is because same thing as dividing by 1/5 is the same as me saying, okay, I'm gonna multiply this side by 5/1. So that means I gotta multiply this side by 5/1, okay? So this right here, you know what? Let's draw that box now, since I have it. This right here is going to give me a 1. Okay? So I'm just going to have an x left. On this side, if I put both of these over 1, well, top times top, bottom times bottom. So I'm still going to have -25/1, which is still just -25. Okay? So this is the same, so two ways of solving this right here. But the part that you got to understand, is that these two mean the same thing. Okay, so this is a side note. So please don't confuse this. This is just a side note over here to understand that x divided by 5 is the same thing as 1/5 x. Okay? All right. Let's see, what else do we have here? And that is all the problems I want. Oh, you know what? Let's do this problem. I just saw this and I was like, ooh. Okay, so 3/17x is equal to 21. Perfect example to do it. So this one you had two ways of doing it, right? We could just multiply by 5 or multiply by 5/1. Really the same difference. Over here, again, same thing. You could go, okay, I'm going to divide by 3/17. That would be true, okay? And with what I taught you with multiplying rationals, you would do copy, change, flip, okay? So you could do it this way. So let's go ahead and show it this way, all right? So I know that this is 21/1. Let me be consistent here, throw this line in between. On the left side, 13/7 divided by 13/7. In other words, a/a, meaning the same two fractions, divided by each other is going to give you a 1. Okay? So what's this going to equal to? So let's take a look at what this is going to equal to. Okay? There we go. So let's take a look. So this is the same thing as saying 21/1, copy. This right here means division, so I'm going to change. I'm trying to figure out how to put down change here without taking up too much room. And then I'm going to flip this one. Right? So these two are the same problems. Okay? So if I'm dividing fractions or dividing rationals, I would copy, change, flip. Okay? There's a refresher course for multiplying or dividing rationals, meaning fractions. Okay? So after I copy, change, flip, remember what I said before. What we want to look at is saying, okay, this is what we actually did. Does anything go into 21/1? You're like, nope. How about 21/3? So something from the top with something from the bottom. And I'm like, ooh, yes, there is. And I'll be like, well, what does? And you'll say, 3 does. And I say, okay, 3 goes into 3 how many times? Once. Goes into 21 how many times? 7. Okay. Can 17 go into 1? You're going to be like, nope. Can 17 go into 1? Nope. Okay? So in other words, my denominator is just ones. So when I multiply this, trying to figure out which color to use here. When I multiply this, it's going to be 7 times 17, and I'm going to have a 119 left. So this is equal to, x is equal to 119. And that would be my answer. Okay? Now, what's the other way of doing it? The other method of doing this, oops, I forgot to even write down this as an example. The other method is saying, okay, I got 3 over 17x is equal to 21. And I said multiply by the inverse. Huh, that looks familiar. This side is just going to be x because what's going to happen here is 17 goes into 17 once and once, 3 goes into 3 once and once, right? So this side is going to equal to x is equal to, look at this. Doesn't that look familiar? Looks just like this, doesn't it? Okay? So that's going to give you the 119. I don't want that. I want this. There you go. All right. So again, 2 ways of doing that, and either way is correct. Okay. So having this tool in your pocket is a great tool to have in your pocket. So is this one. Okay. Same thing here. Okay. So again, remember, this is something we learned a while ago too, right? Not too long ago, but a while ago still. Okay. So make sure that you do remember that, all right? And I'm finished with these notes. If you have any questions, let me know.